Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the techAU.Tesla podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cartwright. And of course, the big news this week is Tesla's holiday update, so we're going to talk about it. This week, Tesla rolled another software update to our cars, 2020.48.26. While it's not version 11, it does have some pretty great features that we're going to talk about. So let's jump in the car and take a look. Okay, so the first big thing you're going to notice is the driving visualization over on the right-hand side. So the car has gone from sort of a top-down view to much more of a three-quarter view model. And this is actually interactive and live. So as you do different things in the car, like put down the windows, you can see them animated. You can also open the front trunk, open the boot, charge port. It's all animated as you do these different things, which is kind of cool. If you open the door, obviously it's not got the accurate percentage of how much the door is open. It just animates it. Same with the trunk and the front. It basically just animates open, and I have to get out and close them. Okay, so with that all back to normal, we can also, when we're in drive, you'll see that the wheels animate, and even when we're in park, so yeah, the wheels animate. And speaking of wheels, this is one of my minor complaints. So if we jump into here, we come into the wheel configurator. So I bought a Performance Minus, so it has the 18-inch aeros, these guys, but obviously, like many people do, take the covers off, and you end up with this. So you'll notice this has red brake calipers and the performance wheels. So it's actually not truly representing my car, despite my mobile app and other parts of the software like this actually representing it properly. Anyway, that issues aside, let's talk about the split between the map view and the actual driving visualization. So we've got a much bigger percentage over here. Now it's something like a, say 60-40, so 40% here, 60% over here, versus what we had before, which is maybe a bit more of a 70-30 split. So more percentage taken up over here, and then when we go for a drive, you'll see the reason why that might be. Much more in line with full self-driving. But yeah, let's have a look at some of the other changes. So part in the bottom here is white now, which sort of fits in with the rest of the aesthetic, but that's in light mode, if you like, or day mode. Night mode, the whole thing switches to black. A little hard to see during the day, but at night this is actually quite cool. No thanks. So auto is where I sort of leave it, because it's nice having this nice lighter interface during the day, but at night we kind of want to have the dark stuff.
6173186.
Cool, thanks for that. All right, so let's continue on. So some other changes in the interface is basically these items down here. So windscreen wipers get their own option. Obviously you can still use the stalk, brings it up. That's one of the things that's not animated, as well as folding mirrors at the moment. So I'm sure they'll get to that in the future. Not a big deal. But we've also got reversing camera. And so what happens with your driving when we're actually driving along is when you've got a full screen app like this, it will actually push the driving instructions over into this pane now, which is actually a really big improvement. Something else that's improved is in the or entertainment area, if you like. We've got arcade and we've got 3 new games. So the Battle Polytopia, Solitaire, Cat Quest. Not amazing games. Solitaire is probably my pick of the bunch because, hey, I grew up with it. Windows 3.1, 95, those kind of days. And Tesla actually has their own little deck here which you can customize. You can change the theme on it, put in like a Cybertruck background, maybe a bit of Mars, that sort of stuff. So it's kind of cool. And one of the brand new things and interesting pieces of this is that we're for the first time seeing a picture-in-picture mode. So not that you can actually play the game, but it minimizes there and you can actually resume exactly where you left off. So then you've got also a full screen mode. That's only available while you're parked. But if you launch that game while you're driving, if I kick into here, something brand new we've never had before, much like the karaoke mode, is you actually have this option to determine or to declare that you're a passenger, even though there's nothing technically stopping you. It doesn't leverage a sensor in the passenger seat to make sure that it is a passenger. It actually lets you play while you're driving, which obviously is a terrible idea. Nobody should ever do that, but it's just interesting that Tesla, for the first time, has made a game actually playable while you're driving. So previously, as I said, we've only had karaoke, but yeah, now that's it's available to us. So the other key things, and some people are critical of this, that the items up here are much smaller and they're sort of grey, so grey against the white is maybe a little more difficult to see, but to be honest, it's a sort of a 15-inch display and you're not too far away from it, so if you've got decent eyesight and you're driving, I think generally most people are going to be okay with it. And to be honest, you've pulled the stalk on the right to shift between the gears, between like drive, neutral, reverse, park. So it's not like you don't know which one you're in, but it is a quick glanceable sort of piece of information that is nice to have, but doesn't need to be a main focus of that display. So when you are driving, the speed is probably smaller than it was, and it's also moved from the center over to here. And as we go for a drive in a second, you'll see that the cruise speed as well as the detected speed zone that we're in, they're also represented up here as well. Down here, there's not a lot that's changed. Your trip information, your tire pressure information once we're driving, it's all still there and available. You've got like hazards and things like that, handbrake, all that sort of stuff is kind of just built into this section of the screen. Now, some people don't like the fact that this has eaten more of the map view, but Elon has already confirmed that he's going to offer additional configurations for people to sort of allow them to prioritize as they'd like. And I'd like to see that level of prioritization or customization come to these icons down the bottom, because to be honest, I don't need windscreen wipers here. I perhaps might want to have the call button down here instead. So I think we'll get to that. And of course, all of that will be stored against your driver profile. So that's kind of it for now for the interface, other than maybe one last thing is release notes. So they've changed the way they're showing release notes, give you a full history, go back in time, which I think is really appreciated because it sort of tells us, how far we've come in a relatively short period of time. There's just one thing that's missing from it, is while we'd get each version of the release notes or the software, we don't actually have the date that it shipped, which I think is a really key piece of information that's kind of missing. So I hope they add that in the future. But as you see, we skip through here, driving visualization improvements, scheduled departure. So in the energy, if you want to get into the energy section, you can just tap on the battery now and you'll get this new option. So scheduled charging, so you could plug in when you get home and then make sure it doesn't start charging till you're off peak time, or you can vice versa, you can tell it, hey, I need to leave for work at 7 a.m. for example, and schedule that. So it will sort of deal with the time of when it needs to have you all charged up. But yeah, that's a new option to sort of have scheduled charging, and you can kind of configure that. So it's a neat option to add to the mix. We're sort of walking these lines of how many extra options do you add without making it too sort of overly complex for people, but I think they're sort of finding their way through, and these sort of new configurations of the display is they're doing a good job in trying to walk that line. One example of that is up the top here, where it's getting a little crowded, especially depending on what you use as a name for your profile. So they've removed the Tesla T from the top. Not a big deal. Okay, so that's it. Let's go for a drive. All right, so there's not too much that's changed. We're still seeing the garbage bins on the side. We're seeing speed in the top right. As I said, that's moved over a little bit. The actual speed zone detected, so in this instance in our state, it's 50. And you'll see the little markers there, the yellow indicators when it detects something beside the car. That's changed a little bit more pronounced than it has been before. But once we get out onto the section of road up here that's 80, then we'll kick on autopilot, and you can see a lot more about how it responds. And I think the interface change will make a lot more sense once we do that. You may have noticed the microphone is missing from the interface now. That's just a simple press on the right button on your steering wheel, and it's going to launch into the voice controls. So it detects the 80 speed zone, kick on autopilot. blue steering wheel obviously represents that it's on, grey when it's not. The detected speed zone's 80 on the left there, 80 on the right is what the cruise is set at, and then of course the current speed. So if I was to catch up to the cars ahead, then it's going to slow me down, and I know that I'm doing less than I could be if they weren't there. But yeah, so this whole model, obviously it's still that awesome ability to spin it around and see it in 3D, and you know, the cars that zoom by it, all the different obstacles you pass. So it's just, that's just a neat trick that they didn't need to do that. It's just kind of a show off from Tesla, but I really appreciate that they're able to use that full 3D model to showcase the car while you're driving. And as I said, we've caught up to cars ahead, so now we're dropping in speed even though the cruise is set at 80. Keeping perfect in the lane line, center as always. So yeah, that's autopilot working as you'd expect. And then in not too far around this corner, we're going to hit a set of traffic lights. And that's probably a good demonstration of why perhaps we need a bit of extra space in the interface. So where we're headed with full self-driving is obviously we're going to reach a time where these cars can drive themselves. And the idea being is that the more that we see through this interface, the more confidence that we have in the car's ability to see and understand the environment around it, and knowing that it's able to handle whatever you throw at it. That's cool. So the map, obviously it's smaller than it was, but to be honest, like, it's, you know, I use it marginally, to be honest. It's like kind of a nice thing to glance at, but it's not a critical aspect of, you know, of me driving the car. Even when I enter a route in, or I'm navigating on autopilot, then, you know, it basically gives you the directions, right? So let's punch in. So imagine I jump to, you know, an address like this. It's going to give me the route, right? So I look at that initially to make sure, you know, have a look at the amount of time I might spend driving, when I'm going to arrive, that kind of stuff. But, you know, minute by minute, I'm not needing to look at that map at all. And then the cool thing is when we launch into a full screen app like, you know, reverse camera, for example, we get the driving directions overlaid over here now. I think there's a bit of collision here that I think needs to be addressed. They should essentially turn that down a little bit. But yeah, you see the traffic lights and the tractor that we just passed, even though it got recognised as a truck. That's pretty cool. And then switching lanes. I have found just this one location that second lane doesn't always get detected properly like that, and the person behind me probably thinks I'm drunk, but I'll do another one in a second and you'll see that's generally pretty flawless. There's something about that road back there that is just not, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to detect the second line enough. So yeah, so let's move along. And this is probably the part where we reach the limit of autopilot, which is, and full self-driving, is roundabouts. So at the moment we're not doing city streets, right? So I get to somewhere like here, and if I let the car do what it wants to do, you see it's recognizing all the arrows on the road and it pulls me up. And then it's up for me to accelerate and take over, and it almost gets it. Like, it's so tempting, but it's not quite there yet. It can't do roundabouts. But as we've seen in the full self-driving beta, it can in that respect. So it's on the way, we know that. You see a nice little lane change there. It just happened really, really smoothly. Probably better than most humans could change lanes. So that's kind of what's on the table, and I think why it's important. We've got more of the screen allocated to full self-driving in those visualizations now. So there's one final feature I want to talk to you about in this update, and that's called Boombox. It might be the most controversial feature in this update, and that's because the pedestrian speaker that's in the front of some Teslas, not mine, but some Teslas, have this pedestrian safety speaker built into the front of the car, which emits sound. And normally it plays like a futuristic kind of whirry sound. Tesla is now giving owners the option to customize what that sound is. And so while there are presets loaded, you can also use the USB key to add a directory called Boombox and upload as many as 5 custom sounds for this as well. So they went a step further than that. You can also leverage a custom sound for your horn. And also when you're smart summoning the vehicle, when it's moving under that smart summon condition, you can have a different sound selected. So quite an interesting combination of options there. unfortunately, those other options, the horn, smart summon, not available unless you have that pedestrian speaker. So the feature just doesn't show up in this update. It's kind of cool, kind of controversial. People can be annoying with it, I'm sure, and I hope that Tesla owners are kind of responsible with it, but there's already reaction videos out there online of people being sort of taken back by the ice cream van driving by. It's not actually a van, it's the Tesla. So a bit of fun, I guess. So it shows a different sort of lightheartedness of the company, something different you won't find from other brands. So that's it. That's the update. So that's it. A really interesting update from Tesla. Looking forward to version 11. But if you like this video, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you hit subscribe so you're always up to date with the latest episodes. And there'll be a lot more videos coming to the channel soon. Cheers, guys.